All right, here we go for another episode of the Corrected View podcast. I'm so excited for our special guest, Dr. Matthew Martin, Anith Pillay, and Dr. Dwight Barnes joining in. I am so excited for this episode because I don't know if I know another doctor that's more passionate about myopia control than Dr. Matthew Martin, and he likes to talk about it.
No doubt.
Talk about how passionate he is. So this is going to be a great conversation, I have no doubt. And Matthew, do you mind just take a couple minutes? Can I give you a brief little bio? So I know everybody knows you already, but if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a little bio so everybody can hear about all your accomplishments, all right? So Dr. Matthew Martin, after graduating with honors in pre-optometry at Ferris State University, Dr. Martin attended the Michigan College of Optometry, graduating with honors again, twice. And do you want me to leave this part out in what year you graduated, or you're okay with it?
No, I'll earn my age and I'll be proud of it.
In 1999, Dr. Martin has been serving the mid-Michigan area for 20 years, providing comprehensive care, managing ocular disease, and fitting specialty contact lens designs. He specializes in pediatric eye care and all types of myopia management with an emphasis on ortho-K. Dr. Martin is a fellow of the International Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control, the AAOMC, who is hosting this podcast since 2005. He has served on the leadership and planning board for this organization and currently serving on the fellowship committee. He takes an active role in testing candidates sitting for their FIAOMC, as well as keeping the testing process up to date. Dr. Martin has a passion for education and has served as a mentor for many doctors, including myself, new to myopia management. In 2017, he was asked to present at Vision by Design boot camp for newcomers. Based on reviews, he has become a permanent member of the boot camp team. And as early as last year, he was a prominent speaker at Vision by Design. Dr. Martin speaks nationally and internationally on the subject of myopia control with an emphasis on ortho-K. His most recent international lecture was in Mumbai, India. Interesting. Wow. Dr. Martin is a founding member of Mission Myopia Control. Its mission is to educate and assist doctors in incorporating myopia management into their private practices. You see Dr. Martin's most recent work in the mentorship program and GP specialist. You can also catch him at Vision by Design this year in Chi-Town. Yes. All right. Is that all accurate? Is that enough?
That is perfect.
20 minutes?
A quick plug for GP Specialists Myopia Mentorship program. That is a no-charge program. If you register with GP Specialists, they'll give you the link. And there are 12 one-hour lectures, webinars covering all types of myopia management stuff, from basic program to promotional things to ideas, tips, tricks. Try this, try that. I've got like a topography. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there, and it's free education, totally worth doing.
I got to check that out. I am a member of GPLI. They have fantastic content, great webinars that are archived. So I definitely got to check that out. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
I'm just going to add in addition to all that bio, which is great and accurate, Matthew's just a genuine good guy.
Dude, we have the best specialty in all of eye care. I don't want to offend any ophthalmologists. I don't want to offend any ODs out there who are like COVD people or whatever, but there's nothing better than myopia management in all of eye care. And we are on the forefront of that, and we have been for years and years and years. And I tell people, it's like doing small magic, right? You know this. This is what excites me about ortho-K, and this is why anyone I come across who doesn't do it, I'm like, what could you possibly be thinking? You take a -3, you fit them, right? And often it's a slam dunk. They come in that first morning, they're 20/20. They think that you are the best person who has ever been around because they're free from glasses. It's magic. It's still magic after it's 2023. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now. It's still magic. I still get excited.
Well, and one of the beautiful things about it too is there is very little territorialism in the myopia management specialty. People legitimately want other doctors to do this. Like you're saying, they want to encourage other people. Those of us that do it know that there are not enough of us doing it.
Yes.
The problem is too big for the number of people that are doing it. There's so many patients out there, and there's plenty of room for all of us doing this, plus a whole boatload of other people coming in doing it as well.
I talk to people all the time about vision by design, and we're going to talk more about vision by design later. But in all of eye care, there's bigger meetings. GSLS, big. Some of the vision expos, big. But there's no meeting that people are as geeked out and excited and willing to share as vision by design. There is nothing that compares. I get excited for weeks before. I come home, I'm excited about it. And every time I'm there, I learn something. And I've been in this field for a while now. And I go and I learn something from Aneth or from you. And then I'm like, wow, geez, I didn't realize that. And it's magic. It's magic. It's brilliant.
It's funny. It's one of those meetings that's already on your calendar, from the year before when they tell you where it's going to be this year. And I was speaking to Aneth a little bit before we went on, but, with a couple of different things going on, life's pretty busy this year. And somebody mentioned to me, are you sure you're going to Vision by Design this year? I'm just like, it's Vision by Design. Yeah, I'm going. I'll be there. I might skip something else. I'm sure I'll do that one. So.
Yeah, that one is always blocked. And Matthew, I don't know if you remember the first time we met, we're at Vision by Design. I don't got to be 6 years ago,
6 or
probably
7,
somewhere around there. And I just happened to be sitting right next to you at a lecture, and we were just chatting. And you happened to ask me, where I practice. I think I was like my first year of my private practice, and he said, "Oh, let me look it up," and gave me a nice review. And then we just started chatting, and the passion, even then, I mean, it was just zooting from you. And then, you know how that goes. You just rope us in. You're like, all right, well, hey, you should be a board member, and you should do this, and you should do that. You get a fellowship, and
take some responsibility.
Yeah, and that's how it goes.
I know we've got a lot to talk about, but I want to geek out a little bit more on Vision by Design for a second. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 3 years. Really, really enjoyed it. It was the best exercise program ever because someone's trying to choke you unconscious the whole time, and I find that very motivating, right? So I really enjoyed that. But what was great about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is someone would twist you up and submit you, and then afterwards you would ask them how they did it, and they would show you how they did it. Like, they were never wanting to hide it. They were like, oh, here's what I did. Look, I threaded my arm through here and I did this. And you're like, oh, right, let me try it on you. And what's magic about that is they want to show you what they did. And that's what Vision by Design does. Because when you're in Vision by Design and I run across Dwight's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this new thing. I want to tell you all about it. It's so cool. This is what I'm doing. I love it. This is great. Or I'll run into Aneth and he's like, hey, I like this. I like that. Have you looked at this? This works better than what we were doing before. That excitement and that I want to show you how to be better, or I have an idea that you might like better. I think that's really worth the time and effort to attend that particular meeting.
Sure.
And that excitement does definitely go through that entire meeting. So I got to ask, where did the excitement start from? How did you get started with Ortho-K, in my opinion?
Yeah, this is interesting. When I came through graduate school, they kind of poo-pooed Ortho-K. Like, we had a guy named Dr. Lakin who had done it for years, but he was already quite elderly at the time and kind of on his way out. And he'd been involved in it, but he wasn't really passionate, or it was on its way down. And so when I graduated, they were like, it doesn't really work that well, and it just kind of poo-pooed it. So it wasn't something that I had pursued straight out of graduate school. I actually had thought, we talked about this earlier, I had thought about doing low vision and actually had done my last externship at Johns Hopkins doing low vision and thought that's what I wanted to do. And then I worked with a lot of elderly people and they didn't have the energy that I wanted. And so I started working with pediatrics. And at the time, I had owned the practice for 2 or 3 years. And I'd gotten pretty good at the day-to-day stuff. Here's a patient, here's contact lenses, here's a foreign body, here's a retinal detachment, your standard stuff. So I was looking around to find something more challenging. And I came across Gary Gerber, who recommended Nick Despeditis. I had a conversation with Nick Despeditis and started doing this. And then that's what hooked me up with the first GOS that I attended, which was the Global Orthokeratology Symposium.
Right.
There was one in Toronto in 2003, and then there was one in Chicago in 2004. I attended both of those. and was interested but didn't know where to start. And what's cool about that is I was at that meeting in either Chicago or Toronto, I don't know which one of the ones it was, and I had gotten into an elevator with Terry Herzberg, and that's where the whole thing just lit up. I got in an elevator with Terry, and he was like, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that," and I was like, "Well, how do I do that?" He's like, "When do you have a fitting set? Why don't you come back to my room?" And so me and him and his wife stood up there and talked, and I was like, "Man, I want to go home and do this right now," and I was just so excited. I actually bought a topographer without ever having fit a patient. So I decided I wanted to do it. I decided I was stoked about it, and I started recruiting patients. And I use this in my lectures. I talk about how to pay for a topographer for someone who's new. I got 10 people who really wanted to try this. Okay, so my 10 people. I went out and bought a topographer, took a loan on a topographer with money I did not have. Okay, things were really lean. I took a loan on a $13,000 topographer. That's how cheap they were at the time. And then I fit 10 patients and paid it off. Like within 3 months, the bank was like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yep." And I just paid it right off. And then I was off to the races because then I had 10 patients under my belt, and, I was excited and on my way.
Matthew,
It's
I love
so
stories like
addictive.
that. Vision by Design is so full of that. I think almost any of us, you can almost has their little list of their influences, like you said, Carrie and at those meetings, and everybody's got their, this person kind of introduced it to me and kind of poked me a little bit to get me started, and then this other person brought me on. It's fantastic the way that stuff happens at those meetings.
Again, I hate to keep using the word magic, but there's no other way to describe it. That to me really describes what ortho-K and myopia management is as a specialty, because these people are just excited about it, and they want you to be as excited about it as we are. So that's pretty awesome stuff.
So you keep using the word magic. Were you into magic as a kid?
Never. Although I do make
way to get into practice, right?
I do make balloons for the kids at the office, though. Does that count?
I think that does count.
Oh, you make them into animals?
Yeah, I make balloon animals for the kids.
Oh,
they're not all snakes, are they?
Yeah, I started doing that about 15 years ago, and it's one of the better things that we did for our pediatric patients. So 15 years ago, we used to give out candy, and we used to give out these little masks for kids, and we just do temporary tattoos and that kind of thing. And then I came up with the idea of doing balloon animals. So I bought some balloon animals and a balloon pump, and then started making them for kids. You have to ask if the child is latex allergic or not, obviously, right? So we started doing balloon animals for the kids, and I'd been doing that for about 3 months, and there was a snowstorm in February. It was blowing 30-mile-an-hour wind. I was up at the front of my office, and this woman goes by, and she's got her little kid. He's about 4, and he's holding her hand. And as he goes by the front door, I hear him say, "I want to go see Dr. Martin and get a balloon." And I charged up to the front, opened the door, and told him to come in, and made him a balloon. And I turned to my staff and I said, "We're doing this always from now on."
Nice.
Honestly, kids come in who are 15, 16 years old, and I'm like, all right, we're finished with your exam. They're like, "Can I get a balloon animal?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll make you a balloon animal," because I've been doing it since they were 4 years old,
So the question begs, why aren't you doing a lecture at Vision by Design on how to make balloon animals?
Isn't that awful? Because I hate when people are like, "Oh, you're a clown," or whatever. I almost didn't do it at first because I was worried it contradicted the whole doctor thing. But so much.
You ever seen Patch Adams?
Yes, when it comes to children, they want you to be a doctor, but they want you to be someone who likes kids. So much in eye care, you run across people who say they're pediatric specialists who don't like children. And that's not a really good combination, you know what I mean? But the balloon animal thing has been fantastic. It's one of those little marketing things that's just brilliant.
That's why I love doing these podcasts, because I always pick up little things. That's when I'm definitely going to take away. You got to show me how to do this balloon.
I'll show you. It takes no time at all. And you learn like 3 or 4 things, and then that's all. And kids are like, "Can you make me a fish?" "Nope." "Can you make me a puppy?" "Yes." "Can I make you a sword?" "I got you." "How about a hat?" That's it. That's all I make. Those couple of things. But
mine will be like, "Can you make me an oval?" "Yes."
Yeah. Yes. Snake. I can do that.
Yeah. So it's a worm. It's a worm. That's what I'm a beginner. What are you gonna do?
You mentioned like how you got in that elevator and Kara Herzberg kind of got you going. So you already established 2 to 3 years in, and then you kind of jumped into head first into myopia control, myopia management, however you want to kind of phrase it. But what was your demographics of your practice before? And you mentioned you got those 10 patients. Like, what were your demographics and how did they change after you started
changed
making
dramatically. The doctor who was at the practice before me was kind of a curmudgeon. He smoked cigars and, you know, he drank a lot of coffee, and he was just kind of, he was a bit of a curmudgeon, for lack of a better term, right? And so he collected a lot of those people who liked him. So we had a lot of people who were 50, 60, 70-year-old chronic 3-pack-a-day smoker kind of people in the office when I first came on. That was kind of a big component of our demographics. And I actually had a patient leave the office. He told me I was too friendly and too enthusiastic. And I was like, okay, maybe you're not the right fit for our office. We actually, in the first 2 years, we kicked out 12 or 15 families.
Wow.
We just told them to go away. You don't go away mad, just go away.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing that we could have done for our practice, because we took the people who were unpleasant and not good for the practice, and we opened up spots for people who wanted to be here, who wanted to be treated nicely, who wanted a staff that was enthusiastic and engaging and liked to work with children. So it was actually a really great move. That's an interesting practice management discussion. We just had to fire a patient today for bad behavior. Sometimes you just have to fire patients, and in the long run, you're so much better off for it. A lot of offices are so afraid to do that.
What are your tips? Because that's always a tricky thing. Like, how do you go about firing a patient?
Yeah, I can send you the letter if you want, or I could even link it in a Google Drive and you could access it that way. But it's just basically a letter that says, due to your latest interaction with the staff, I think that we are going to dissolve our relationship within 30 days. It says, here's your medical diagnoses that I was watching for you. Here's some recommendations on some places you could reach out to find out. And then, you can always send them to someone you're not terribly enthusiastic about. And, if not, you can reach out to the, Michigan Optometric Association, and they have suggestions for you. But in the long run, that patient's going to be happier somewhere else, and your staff's going to be happier.
Is that a conversation you have with them, or is it just like, hey, send them a letter and be done with it?
Mostly it ends up being a situation where my staff, who I'm incredibly proud of and who are incredibly patient, will often come to me and be like, we just can't solve this issue. This person is swearing, or this person is being racist, or this person is being anti-Semitic, or I've had a
these are like flagrant violations.
And so sometimes those people just need to go. And I think a lot of young doctors these days are afraid to do that because, we never have enough patients, right? Sure. We always want more patients.
You want more of the right patients, hopefully.
That's the key.
That's the thing. There. Listening to you, one of the books I read recently, and I think it's worth reading for people who like reading books that help with practice management, and it's not specific to optometry, but it's called The Pumpkin Plan. And the idea being, if you want to grow a pumpkin, you might as well grow the biggest pumpkin, because the biggest pumpkins get you the praise and sell for the money and stuff like that. But you have to prune off. You can't do everything. You can't be everything to everyone. You have to prune. You have to kill off the smaller ones that are competing for nutrients and things like that. And you have to have your eye on the prize. And so the idea being, I think even more so when you have a specialty that does demand a little bit of hand-holding, and that's true about orthokeratology, right? These patients, they're paying good money for it, and they're getting their money's worth completely 100%. But they're paying good money for it. You see them more than your typical patients. They're going to call with questions for your coordinator and things like that. You can't give them that kind of care and that kind of time if you're trying to be everything to everyone. And so I'll plug that book that I have no affiliation with, but I think it's a great way to look at it. And Nick Despotidis talks about it all the time. You can't give the level of care that it demands to be a top-notch ortho-K practice if you're trying to give that kind of care to people who aren't those valuable patients.
I think that's absolutely pertinent. And I think it really applies to eye care. One of the things that optometry does wrong, and we've always struggled with, is there's not a lot of OD to OD referrals. And that's something that I have really been conscientiously working on. I have a good friend of mine, Tom Washevsky, who's a really big dry eye guru. And Tom was like, you need to buy this equipment. You're going to get an IPL. We're going to do this. I took a $2,300 special dry eye education over 2 days. Crystal Breimer, great education, fantastic. But when I went to work with those patients, I didn't enjoy working with that group of patients. A lot of elderly, a lot of very unhappy people, just not really my groove, right? And it made me realize that I can't be good at everything. I have to be good at what I'm good at and what blows my hair back. And so now I have a colleague of mine in one town over that has an IPL, and I have a buddy of mine in another town over that has the IPL. So when I get a rosacea patient, or if I get someone with dry eye, I just ship them out. If I get a patient who needs VT, I don't even attempt visual training stuff with kids. If it's complicated, if it's something that needs more than just glasses or a relaxed lens or a multifocal or some prism, I just send them to the VT guy. I got a colleague of mine, Lee Newton, does a wonderful job with him. I just send him to Lee. He's happy to see him, and he does a much better job with them than I would. And then that also gives him reciprocity from the perspective that he feels comfortable sending me a myopia management patient he might not necessarily want to handle. And I think that's one thing that eye care really would benefit from, is if all of us in eye care started thinking more along the lines of being good at what we like and sharing with others, because it doesn't diminish our stature to give somebody else a dry eye patient or to give somebody else a VT patient.
Matthew, I think that's a really interesting point to dive into, though, because sometimes there's the irrational fears out there, right? Okay, this person's in my same town and we compete for patients and things like that. And I don't know that you can do a lot for the irrational fears, but what about for the more, I guess, rational fear, maybe I'd say? How can you remove the barriers that would keep someone from sending you a patient? I guess an example would be if somebody does a lot of primary care and they see kids, right? But they don't do myopia management. And they have a patient who would be a good candidate and they're going to send it to you. What can you do on your end to make them feel very comfortable that their other family members are probably going to keep going to that doctor and that they're going to get some communication back from you? What do you do on your end?
Yeah, that's really an interesting discussion, because I have been getting more referrals than we used to get. Luckily for me, a lot of my referrals have been coming from commercial settings where they don't necessarily mind if the patient decides not to come back to them. But I absolutely make it a point not to collect family members. I'll say, I'm seeing your child for ortho K or myopia management, atropine, peripheral defocus contact lenses. I want to send you back to the doctor that referred you to me. And then I always rely on a phone call. I don't think a letter, I think the letter is kind of stuffy. And if I can call up the doctor and be like, hey, thanks for sending me that patient. Here's what I recommended to mom and dad. I don't know if they're going to go forward with it, but here were my recommendations. That seems to work really well, I think. And I prefer the phone call with regards to communication on those referrals. I think a letter is okay, but I don't think it has the same human connectivity as a phone call or even a text message. You know what I'm saying? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so a lot of our practice is referral based. Almost all of our ortho K, probably 80% of it is referral based. So we really rely on our colleagues, and we've been really blessed that they trust us. So the biggest thing is, they got to know, the patient's got to know that I'm doing this and you're going back for your primary eye exam. So the first thing that we do, and I learned this from my colleague, my partner actually, the first thing I do is I want to know where they refer from before I walk in the room, and I say how great that doctor is. So I always make it an emphasis to say, I got to know who the referring doctor was. So I always compliment that doctor and say how you're in great hands, they're fantastic. And it's so important that it's amazing that they made this referral because they're concerned about you. So they know that that's their doctor, and I'm just doing this one little thing. The other thing, I do send the letter. I usually do it after we're kind of completed, but I'm not as old school as you. I don't do the phone call. I'll probably send a text or an email or something.
And texting works well too. It's just, I want that direct I want
Yeah,
that direct
I
communication.
think that helps for sure to let them know the progress. I'll set, but a lot of practices may want that letter just to know, like, hey, they're busy too, so they want something in the files, and
Yeah.
we have a little template that we can send also.
One other little thought on that is, if a practice is primarily, if they are seeing kids, but they're primarily selling glasses and things like that, if you have a patient who's maybe going to do an atropine therapy, or they're going to do soft contact lenses where they're going to need some glasses for a backup, is that something where you typically advise them to go back to their referring doctor to get those glasses, and make that really clear that, okay, no, we're providing just this one service and they can most certainly supply those glasses, at least for maybe commercial, they don't care as much because they may not get a share of that. But if somebody has a private practice, that seems important.
Depending on
Absolutely,
your
100%.
EMR, you can put those little alerts. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
Crystal, and Matthew, you can say how your EMR works, but we have an alert for anybody that's referred. Anytime you go into the patient's chart, a pop-up comes up that says referred by Dr. So-and-so for this service only. So they know, don't book family members, don't book primary eye care, don't sell them anything. They're here for that. And then they go back to their primary eye doctor for everything else. Matthew, how do you handle that?
No, I think that's exactly right. We don't have as sophisticated a system as I would like. In my market, I've had difficulties with colleagues. I'm getting referrals, but not, traditionally as many as I would like. And certainly 80% of my patients don't come on referral. Most of my new patients are from other patients we see already. We do get referrals, but not the volume that I would like. I've tried sending out letters to local doctors. I've tried sending out packets with information. We do myopia management. I've had all these years of experience. I would love to educate you and your staff. If you're interested, I will educate you. I even sent out within our packet, it had a sheet in there with all the header slides of all the lectures I would be willing to give to the staff for education. Because, I've been lecturing long enough now where I've got 20 or 30 lectures that you can whip out and just amend for, different staffs or whatever. And I had a really hard time getting anyone locally to bite on that, like really difficult. One of the doctors, or a particular 2-doctor group I reached out to, and I said, hey, I'd love to help. If you want to get into this, I'll help you get into it. If you want to do ortho-K, I'll help you do ortho-K. Because part of what the Academy wants us to do is the Academy wants us to share this passion. And they want us to be teaching other doctors. So I reached out and I said, I'd be more than happy to come and talk about myopia management or educate your staff on myopia management. I'll give them PowerPoint seminars online. And this particular 2-doctor set was like, we're just not interested in learning. I was like, okay, Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's always tough, but I think your strategy is right. I mean, you have to go in thinking, I want to help you, whether you refer to me or not. I think all three of us can agree. Our biggest problem is not getting more myopia control patients. Our biggest problem is probably when they come in saying, how come I never heard of this before?
Yeah,
that's my biggest issue. Yeah. And the more doctors that do, I mean, there's a lot of myopic kids out there. There's enough for everybody. So the more people doing it, the better. And then if they're wanting to refer, if they're in a primary care setting, great. But at least being aware of it to be able to triage it, right?
We don't get a lot of people. Dwight was speaking earlier that he gets a lot of people who walk in specifically wanting the service. We don't get that in my area. I'm in a fairly rural setting, and we have to be always talking about it, always mentioning it, always discussing it. I, as a general rule, don't get people who come in and say, we want to do ortho-K. I mean, I get some of them, but not at the volume that obviously I would like it to be, and a lot of that I think is our rural setting. I'm in a 2,000 person town, and I have a very busy practice and a fairly busy ortho-K practice. But obviously, if we had a more target-rich environment, that might be more efficacious for us. But we just have to be more on the educational component. Did you know we do this? Did you know this was an option? That type of thing.
Well, what's interesting is you have one of the busiest ortho-K and myopia control practices in the world, and you're in a rural setting, and I'm in an urban setting in Houston. It shows that if you have a passion for it, you can build that kind of practice. It's possible. I do want to get into one other thing, because I know this is a passion of yours. and you hinted on it a little bit about practice management. You know, how to kind of get the patient's mom and dad, everybody to say yes. Like, what are some tips you can have to the new doctor that don't have as much experience of like, all right, I'm interested, but you know, how do I get people to say yes to it?
Yeah, so before I start speaking, let me preface this by saying I'm a big stealer of things. Okay? Whenever I hear a good idea that's better than mine, I take it. I try to give credit to who I stole it from, but you know, that's how it is, right? So, and I'm sure you guys do this already, but my big recommendation for new doctors would be just to bring people back to that free consultation, or some people charge for it, which is a whole discussion. We could talk for half an hour on that alone. Bring people back to the consultation, you know, and put it at the end of the day. So, you know, we're here till 7 o'clock Mondays and Wednesdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays we're here till 6. So we will set that myopia management appointment at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. Well, that's a really important spot that everybody in the world wants. And so I always try to fill that spot. Okay. And then when I fill it, I have time at the end of my day to spend extra time. Because, you know, you get an Asian family, maybe there's a language barrier, maybe you have, you know, patients who aren't as familiar with the terminology, and you want to be able to take the time to really do a good job. I think what fails with a lot of doctors is when they're rushing, when you've got to go, go, go. Every once in a while, my staff will stick one at 3 in the afternoon, you know, and I've got half an hour between that patient and the next one, and I've got to get, you know, myopia master. I got to print up this stuff and talk about it. I've got to do a refraction. I've got to do all the stuff I need to do and have time to talk about all the ins and outs of peripheral defocus contact lenses, atropine, ortho-K, you know, all of that type of stuff. And you need to have the time and the ability to take the time with those people you need. So as a young practitioner or a person who is new, my big recommendation would be just to give yourself the time that you need so that you can answer questions and, you know, make those people feel good about the decision they're making. Do you agree with that, Dwight?
I think that's a really good point. It's very similar to what I do, and you know, it's funny listening to, you know, to the three of us, because Matthew, as you mentioned, you're rural, Anith, you're urban, and I'm suburban. I'm kind of in a suburb of Raleigh and Research Triangle Park, and they all have their nuances. But that's been a big thing with me, and I think probably more than anybody else, I took that from Nick Despotidis. I did his Supercharge workshop years and years ago, and took a lot of things from it, and probably should do it again. I know he's always updating it. He's such an engaging speaker. But you know, I was talking to a colleague who does a little bit of ortho-K not too long ago, and the comment they made to me is, what do you do for 45 minutes or an hour? It doesn't take that long. And I was like, well, it's education. It's mostly not technical. I mean, the myopia master my technician is getting, the topographies, and I know there's a lot of arguments on should you get your own topographies, but no, I trust my technicians to get really good topographies. And you know, I am old school in the sense that I like putting a mold on the child's eye while they're in the office. It doesn't matter what I'm going to fit. It doesn't matter if it's customized. It's going to be designed on software. Mold goes on the eye because I want to know, did they freak out? And I do want them to kind of get that sense, oh, I did it. I was a little scared and I did it. And then their training is going to go better. So that takes a little bit of time. But even with that, I mean, putting a mold on doesn't take that long. I love to talk them through it. Hey, they're nervous, whatever. This is what I'm going to do. And you know, it's gonna feel exactly like this, and then the longer it sits there, it's gonna feel a bit better, and I just talk them through the whole process, and their parents are asking questions, and so you're kind of back and forth with the questions for the parents and the child and things like that. It's really easy to fill 45 minutes or an hour, and you know, you talked about, Matthew, when patients come in and they don't know anything about myopia management, and Anith, I think you mentioned that as well. I'm in a different situation. I'm in the Research Triangle Park there. We have a lot of corporations, people coming in from all over the country and all over the world to work here. And so a lot of people know about it. It can be just as difficult when they have so many questions, right? They come in really smart. Their parents are engineers and scientists, and they've looked up studies online and they've done their research. And I don't mean like done their research. I mean, like they're really smart and they understand it, and they're asking me tough questions, and they're asking me about axial length before I even bring it up. And yeah, you got to field those questions, right? You got to show them that they really should put their trust in you, that you are familiar with these things and you're going to do what's best for their child. So filling up 45 minutes or an hour is a piece of cake. And if you do answer their questions well, they're more likely to move forward.
And I'm probably old school. I do a lot of custom stuff. I do Wave. I do, iSpace, and I have consultation or consultants that do stuff for me. But I like to put a lens on a patient. You can take that -2, and I throw in some anesthetic, proparacaine first, then I load the lens with fluorescein, toss them in their eye, have the kids sit there with their eyes closed, and then I chat with the parents while we talk about all the ins and outs, risks, benefits, what's good, what's bad. Parents inevitably ask, how long is the child going to stay on this? And I give them stories and talk about success. In the half an hour it takes me to get all the stuff answered, often that -2 will be molded down to 20/20 or close to it. And then you take the retainers out and you throw the chart up, and the kid reads 20/25, let's say, and they were at 20/80 or 20/70 or whatever. Parents are like, damn, that's the greatest thing ever. And the kids think it's wonderful. And you can often get good information from that initial 20 minutes of fit or 30 minutes of fit. I was going to put this patient in a toric periphery, but holy wow, this spherical periphery stock lens did a really good job. Maybe I just need to alter it slightly and order that and save myself all the extra money and expense of a toric periphery because there wasn't as much elevation as I thought there was going to be. You know what I mean? It can be that kind of stuff that really saves you the heartache. And the kid's better off to have his eyes closed and relaxed while the parents and I chit chat. Like you said, how are you doing? How does it feel? Is it okay for you? That kind of a thing.
Well, you talk about the magic of it. What's more magic than that? As a parent, how do you say no to that? He just fixed my kid in 20 minutes,
That's fire. It's awesome.
That's so interesting. Yeah, you both do the in-office application. I actually don't do that. I order empirically always, but I can't argue. I mean, when a parent sees, hey, in 20 minutes, in the time that you took to answer my questions, now my kid sees that well, like they see it live and in direct, like, oh, this stuff works. That's a pretty impressive.
Yeah. Now you're not doing that with a -6, and you're not doing that with a -7 or 8, but yeah.
That's my hurdle. Those are the kids that are coming through me.
Yeah, -2, -3, you got a good shot at it,
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to ask, so you mentioned that you do like to put the mold on, and some of the other tests. What I think we talked about, the time flies. There's a lot of questions, but what are the tests you like to do during that initial consult? What do you like to have done clinically before all the questions come your way?
Yeah, certainly. Before I walk in the exam room, I personally am going to want 4 or 5 clean topographies for each eye, and my staff does a really good job with that. And I'm always very strong with them. I need nice, good, wide topographies, no lids in the way. Lots of nice data. So obviously they're going to collect that information. They collect an auto refraction for me. And then they're going to get myopia master. So I know,
just to be clear, myopia master, in case they don't know, this is the axial length measurement you're collecting.
Yeah, sorry. So the myopia master is a fantastic tool. A little bit more expensive than I hope to pay for that particular instrument, but it has been worth it. And the reason that is worth it is because it creates this lovely paperwork that I can go over with the patients, showing axial length, the spherical equivalent prescription, and then showing me with the Brian Holden vision calculator where we think they're going to land as far as the prescription as an adult. So that is an incredibly useful tool. Like that is mad. That's a wonderful item. It really does a great job. So autorefraction, topography, myopia master. Sometimes I cyclo kids on the first treatment. Sometimes I don't. I know we're always supposed to cyclo them, at some point in that process, but sometimes I don't get that. If I'm going to be doing atropine, then, where's the argument on that? You find out a lot of that stuff. Obviously, I try to cycle them all, but sometimes you just can't do everything at once. And then when I land in the exam room, obviously I'm going to be checking a refraction, slit lamp, assessment of the cornea. So, all of your sort of standard, you're going to fit this person to a specialty lens. The big thing for me is that myopia master, getting that axial length and being able to talk about where we think that child will be. And then I tell parents, and this is my opinion, so there should be a declaration or a warning here. I think in some cases, the Brian Holden Vision Calculator underestimates myopia now because most of that data is pre-2020. Because I think our rates of myopia and our rates of myopia progression have gone up significantly since 2020.
That's probably a good point. There's some study that show that during the COVID period when children were locked down, how much myopia has progressed during that time. It's a great point.
One other note on the myopia master, and I don't know if you find this in your practice, Matthew. It's also great at the follow-up visits. You know, you're going to get some axial length change. That's supposed to happen as they grow. You want it to be less than expected for their age, and it takes out a little bit of that. Okay, they're this age. I expect less than about 0.1 millimeter per year, stuff like that. You just graph it again. Did the curve go higher or did it flatten? If it went lower in terms of percentiles, you did your job. Or even if it stays flat, right? But if it's going higher, we need to do a little bit better. It's a great way to check your work and potentially share that with parents as well.
I think we could have a whole conversation sometime in the future on what do you do when you're already doing two different things for a child, okay? So you have your mechanical myopia management. So your peripheral defocus, contact lenses, and ortho-K both work on the same concept of peripheral defocus. And then you've got your atropine, right? So you've got mechanical and chemical. That's the way I break it up.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a child who's doing ortho-K and they've got a nice small treatment zone inside the pupil, and I'm doing a beautiful job getting them vision and everything's rocking, but they're still growing in eyeball length. So I add atropine. 0.025%, 0.05%, whatever. So now I'm doing a mechanical and a chemical version, and the patient is still growing. What do you do then?
You up one or the other. That's what I would do. And the easiest would be probably up the chemical portion.
You know, but I think that's an interesting discussion because I've had a couple of those lately. I get a lot of these patients. When I get referrals, sometimes, you know, you got this -8 who's already quite a ways along, and we're doing everything we can to hold them down. And then you're into this game of when is it enough, and what do I need to do to overcome that or slow that roll, if you will.
But you might already be doing better than if if they were just to wear glasses. Anyway.
Well, and I have that discussion with parents all the time. I say, we are doing the most anyone could do in this field. Like they could move to California or they could move to Texas, and Anith and Dwight are going to be doing pretty much this is what we can do for your child at this time.
I'll argue Texas is a little better than California, but
well, also, the general thought process is the faster progressors on treatment, we're probably going to be the faster progressors without. In other words, the faster they are likely to progress, the harder it is going to be to stop that progression altogether. If they're a -8, they didn't get there by being a slow progressor,
That's true.
I mean, we all get frustrated, just like the parents. I mean, we're sitting there sharing the same frustration. Man, I wish I was slowing this a little bit more than I am. But, if you've got the perfect treatment, you can't get better than the perfect treatment pattern. I mean, you're looking at that topography, you're looking at, how much plus you're building up there in terms of that myopic defocus dose, right?
Yeah, let's say if you're rocking like a +4 or +5 in the mid periphery there.
Yeah. And you've got the atropine, and there is a limit to how much you'll get doctors disagreeing on this, but there's limits to how much some patients will tolerate. And if they're already at like a 0.05, they might tolerate more, but they may not tolerate more. You may simply be at your limit and have to. It's not easy to be satisfied with that, but occasionally you might be doing all you can.
I think it's an interesting discussion, and it's a discussion I'd like to see at like a Vision by Design panel or something where, some people talk about these things, right? Because I find myself doing more and more combination therapy than I used to.
Yeah. And I find myself starting with combination therapy sometimes,
Yeah.
You look at it, you look at where they are as far as on their growth chart, they're in the 90th, 95th percentile already, and they're progressing pretty fast. I'd rather overtreat initially. I mean, if that's even a thing, be more aggressive initially and then see if we can back off as opposed to the opposite.
Yeah, there's a lot of study that show, I can't even name the amount, but a lot of them, almost all of them show combo therapy is always better than the single therapy. So it makes sense to do that in those cases for sure. All right, I know we did dive really deep into some clinical stuff, but I want to ask you about some personal stuff that leads into practice management, if you don't mind.
All right, I'm in it to win it.
All right. So I know you are now getting into a new building, and so you had practice for several years, and you're now transitioning and building your own building.
Oh my God. I have so much to say.
I know a lot of doctors are always interested, myself included, of, what is that transition like? I know I talked to you a little bit about it, but going in from, all right, leasing, and you did it successfully for years and you're making money, and then, all right, I made the decision, makes sense to get an actual building and starting from the ground up and transitioning those patients. As concise as you can make it, because I've talked to you about it, I know there's been headaches. If you could tell us maybe top 2 headaches that came with it, and then the top 2 things to avoid for somebody who's looking into going into it.
First of all, let me tell you the motivation for this.
Oh, yeah, great.
We have been in a 1,200 square foot practice for about 20 years here. And 1,200 square feet is not a big practice. Nobody has their own office. Everyone shares any space we have. People eat at their desks. We don't have a break room, so people are eating out where folks can walk by the window and knock on the window and want to come in. So we just need more room, 1,200 square foot, but the volume of patients we see is kind of ridiculous. So we run an incredibly tight ship here. It's a dance, right? Because you're like, everyone's got to be moving, everything's got to be smooth because of our small space. And I'm 50, so this factors into it as well. I'm 50, and I've had 2 open heart surgeries and a bunch of heart procedures, and so my timeline may not be as long as other people's timelines. So eventually I want to be in a position when I'm 60 where I'm working 2 or 3 days a week. And in order to do that, I have to bring in a partner. Okay. So in order for me to bring in a partner, we have to have more room. And that's what began the whole process for this in the first place. Okay. So we are moving from our 12,000 square foot practice to a new building. And I purchased a Knights of Columbus building. It's 8,000 square feet. And it's an older building, and I got it for a really ridiculous price. And if I told you the price, people in Texas and California would cry, because the price I got it at is so Midwestern. You would be like, what, really? So we're going to be moving our practice here out of our 1,200 square feet into a 4,800 square feet space. Great. So we're going to be 4 times larger than we are right now, which I'm really excited about. It's going to give me 4 exam rooms instead of 2, which I'm super excited about. It's going to be a huge pre-testing room, and it's going to open the door for me to bring an associate on. So 10 years from now, I only have to work 2 or 3 days a week, which is my goal. I don't ever see myself retiring, but I don't really want to work full time, when I'm in my 60s, right? I want to just be having fun, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I think we're tight on time. Is that true?
Yeah, but we're going to bring you back. This is clear. We're going to bring you back. So, and by the way, I wrote down a couple of things that I thought would be perfect for the next time you come on, because a couple of things that came up are kind of the category I put them under were burning questions. Okay. And one of them, and I don't want to hit it here, I think we bring you back for it, but the whole myopia management versus myopia control verbiage, which I think is a neat topic to look at. And the other is, I didn't want to derail you because you were in the middle of a really good point, using Preparicane versus not. And there have been some pretty heated debates on the email thread for the AAOMC. And I think that's a pretty cool topic too. And I bet we could come up with about 4 or 5 or 6 of those kind of burning hot topics and have a little friendly banter on them. But the last thing I wanted to throw out there is, I know you were sort of talking about your excitement you have for things going on in the myopia management space right now, and specifically with Vision by Design and some of the changes going on there, and looking forward to this meeting. So I thought maybe we could wrap up with kind of what are you looking forward to the most regarding to the rest of this year with myopia management, with Vision by Design later this year?
Yeah, so I'm really enthusiastic about this year's Vision by Design meeting. Number one, it's in Chicago, which I think is going to be awesome because it's such a nice central location for everybody getting in and out flight-wise. So I'm excited about that. And what I'm really excited about, and where the magic happens at Vision by Design, is that everyone there is so friendly and everyone there is so enthusiastic that I think it's going to be really great. And I'm really excited to see what some of our lecturers are going to bring to the table this year, not only for educational component and didactic information, but accessibility and enthusiasm. That's what I'm excited about. You know, I'm excited about seeing Nick speak and Dr. Despeditas. You know, I'm excited about seeing you two speak. You know what I mean? That's really cool. And Cheryl's amazing, and Caroline's amazing. And I just love when people get on stage and they want to be there and they're excited about being there, and there's that buzz in the audience, and then a lecture happens and then everyone walks out and they're like, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Did you hear that? I can't believe they said that. At last meeting, when they were talking about the fact that an ortho K-fit that's ever so slightly decentered is better myopia management, I was like,
Pat and Randy. Yeah, all of a sudden we look better.
You know? Because sometimes they're not perfect, right? I mean, sometimes you get that perfect one, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you get such amazing results when it's slightly decentered.
Yeah.
And it was like this clouds opened up. And that's the kind of thing that you get at these meetings, and especially at Vision by Design.
Yeah, the ones that don't make it into your lecture because they're not as pretty, maybe just as effective or more effective. It makes you feel good, right?
Yes. But there's so many enlightening things that come up and so many interesting points of discussion. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to, you know, and the flow of ideas, you know, talking to you guys and finding out what you like and don't like, and, you know, what are you doing to solve this problem and what are you doing to solve that problem? And the fact that everyone has these unique ways of solving things that you might not have thought of, that's really cool, because from an evolutionary standpoint, oftentimes we're getting to the same place, but we may have taken this radically different path to get there, right? And you may be here and I had to go like this, and I'm like, well, shoot, if I had just done that, that would have fixed my problem in the first place. From now on, I'm doing your method because your method's better, you know? I think that's really great.
Very good.
I can't agree more. I think the biggest thing is like how everybody is so enthusiastic about learning and growing together. Because, you know, relatively speaking of everything else in eye care, ortho is kind of new. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from each other. And there's some docs that are doing some wild stuff out there that we want to share ideas from. And that always happens. I remember last year, I think I was sitting right behind you when Randy and Pat did that lecture. I was sitting at the edge of my seat like I was watching Batman or something. I mean, my jaw was dropped. It was crazy. You know, you would think when you do ortho for several years, there's not so much you can get from these meetings. But every year, I'm shocked, like the enthusiasm, but also of what I can take back into practice the next day. So it's always great, not only what I can learn in the lecture hall, but also outside of the lecture.
Sure.
Matthew, I want to thank you so much for a fantastic time chatting with you. We definitely got to do this again. Dwight kind of teased it with some topics where I think there'll be some heated debates. I think that'll be a good one. But thank you so much for spending time with us. It was so much fun. I really, really appreciate it.
And I do have some things to say on the building when we do get back together next, because I've got lots of good suggestions on what not to do. So we
didn't even get into that. Yeah. We got into that.
You can learn from my mistakes.
Yeah. So we tease the audience on like, hey, what do you want to do when you get a new building? Well, this is what you do, and then we cut it off. Perfect teaser.
I got some good stuff.
That will be happening in the next episode. Thank you so much for everybody listening in. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, everybody from AAOMC for allowing us to do this. So until next time, we'll do this again soon.
It's an honor.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Good night.